My name is Colin Weeks. I am 25 years old, and I grew up in North Vancouver, down the road from Avant Life Church. I grew up there my whole life and never went to church once. I love experiencing life as if it's a movie. I love music as sort of like an accompaniment to experiences, an orchestra or like a score to whatever's happening in your life. I grew up in a secular household, like a super loving, family-oriented household. A big chunk of our family lives close in proximity, so we're having like family dinners every 2 weeks. You'd think my family is Christian if you didn't know that they weren't. Like just the way they live their lives. It kept us sane, and it keeps us sane, like just having the support unit from our family. But there was also no discussion of spirituality or like sort of what's out there or like where do we go after we die. Like there wasn't really any dialogue about just like why we're here. I feel like today, like a modern Western world today, it's really easy to feel like you don't need God. Jesus, before I was Christian, was no different than any other word in my like vocabulary that you throw around when someone's like, oh, Jesus, or like, oh my God. Like it's just like a word. Like there was literally nothing to it. My chin was up a little bit towards Christianity. I had some negative ideas about what I thought it was. I thought it was basically there to make you feel better. If you were having a bad time, that was kind of all it did, and that it was irrational, and it was for old white men. That was maybe I shouldn't say that, but it was just, I don't know. I never even once seriously considered it. At least in my memory, like I don't remember ever actually being like, oh, like I should look into this. It was just like, pfft. And so I think a lot of my perception of Christianity was sort of just an amalgamation of all these moments in my life where I had heard like some really aggressive legalism about faith or something. And you just take those pieces and build this little mini image of what you think it is. That was fine until I think like mid to later high school and getting into university for me, when I started like really unboxing those questions myself and realizing I hadn't really been brought up on anything. When I started asking those questions, I had no foundation to really look at. It was just like, well, we've never really talked about it. I don't know. So that cued what felt like a really long time of just seeking and like experiment, like turning over every rock kind of and being like, okay, what does this look like? What does this mean? And that was a slow and frustrating process. But I'm glad that I actually got the opportunity to just go seek that out myself. There's a lot of different emotions that come alongside seeking truth. Excitement if you feel like you're onto something. There's moments of like major anguish when you feel like there's nothing. You just spiral and you can't find purpose in anything, and you can barely get out of bed because it's like what is the point of any of this? But there was also super big highs of like, oh, maybe this is what life's all about. And you kind of ride that wave for a little bit, but it always kind of diminishes. And I found in the moments where I really like played surgeon on my brain and pulled it open to really look at what I believed in. There's oftentimes not a whole lot supporting what your beliefs are, and it's like that's pretty confronting because you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm living my life based on like a really core belief here, and I actually don't know why I believe in this one thing, for example, and that can be pretty scary. It feels like you're in rough waters and you're trying so desperately to find something you can hold on to just for a second, even if it's not like the right thing, just so you can breathe for a second. Like, so you're seeking for the easiest possible truth to hold on to buoy yourself. That's a crummy place to be in. I had felt like I had gone out into the world and tried all these different approaches to life and like different points of or perspectives on life. Ultimately, like I kind of kept coming back to square one where I didn't really know what was true or not, and it was kind of like, oh, like, yeah, I hit this like point. It was like, okay, this enough is enough. I need to like really reassess everything. Matt and I actually came up with a mantra, and it was lean in. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna like apply this to my life. And every time I feel resistance towards something, I have to lean into it, even if it feels wrong, stupid, irrational, or there's no way this could be true or that could be true. I have to lean in just for the sake of giving everything a chance, because so far nothing's really worked. And then of course, like Christianity pops up, church pops up, and I have to lean into it. And it challenged the heck out of me, and I wrestled with it so hard. I felt a lot of control or peace in my life from having from being able to rationalize everything and understand everything. Faith directly challenges that. And with faith, at some point there is like a leap. You have to not know everything. And that was really tough for my brain because I think up until that point, I wouldn't make moves in my life or like try things out unless I felt like I had like a sort of a rational control on how it's going to play out, what I know about it, like those kinds of things. Really quickly though, funnily enough, when I leaned into Christianity, like right away, I was like, oh, wait a second, I've got a lot of what I think I know about this is actually wrong. And that piques your interest right away because you're like, okay. And it was this like slow peeling back process of like, this doesn't make sense. Lean in. Okay, it kind of makes sense. This doesn't make sense, and yada, yada, yada. It just never stopped. Two things that convicted me. One was the parable about the person who builds their house on a rock versus sand. And that pierced me because I had this feeling for ages now that I hadn't been able to vocalize of like trying to build up my understanding of life or trying to build up something, and it constantly breaks. And you feel like you're getting better at building the next one, and then it breaks from whatever happens. And it's the whole parable of the storm sweeping in and your house falls down. That kind of humbled and hushed me up a little bit. The second one, Amanda said to me, and it was, a God-sized hole can only be filled by God. And that's what it felt like this feeling of this searching of why do I constantly feel like I'm like hitting my head against the wall, and like exhausting so much energy to figure out like why I'm here and what the purpose of life is and like what I'm supposed to be doing. It was so obvious that I needed to pay attention to that, and I that wasn't just like a cool saying that you think about, and then that knocked me over. Since exploring faith and coming into faith, I feel like sort of my metaphor for the experience is like when you have a knot like a muscle knot and someone massages it out and it just like relaxes the muscle. And maybe you could call it like your spiritual muscle. I don't know. But if like I felt like there was so much tension in me before, which always surprises people because I'm a bubbly person, but like I've always carried like a lot of tension and frustration and anger actually. I don't think I realized or I was aware of how hard my heart had become, and freeing myself of that has been the biggest sort of paradigm shift. Okay, if I met someone who was in the same position I was like 6 to 8 months ago, and they're kind of checking out the front door of Christianity, but they've got all these reservations, I would tell them a huge thing for me was learning to doubt my doubts. And it's kind of puts a U-turn on things. It's really easy to critique something, but then to critique your own posture of critiquing, which is kind of abstract, but that messes you up really quickly because it immediately exposes how little ground you're standing on. First of all, you don't lose anything by exploring. If it's not true and it's a joke, like there's nothing wrong. It's sort of subtle, but there's a lot of pride when you're checking out something like Christianity, because if it's right and you happen to be wrong this whole time, that means this whole time you've been wrong about. Like that's a big thing, and there's a lot of identity attached to like your understanding of the world. The possibility of being wrong exposes your pride, like your identity a lot, and pride can quickly mix into that. I would want to try to disarm someone and just like help them to relax and realize that they're not losing anything by exploring. I used to laugh to myself and go like, man, wouldn't it be crazy to just realize that everything you thought you knew about life was wrong and actually have this like whole paradigm shift? Like that would be so funny if something like that happened. But kind of laughing because I felt like there's no way that would happen, and then it did, and that's wild.